Welcome back to Timeless Mindset. In this episode, we're joined by Boris Walter. He's a hypnotherapist, a psychotherapist, and he specialises in past life regressions. Spirituality is a buzzword in the self-improvement space, but what does it actually mean? How can I be spiritual? How can I access my spirituality? How can I understand myself more and change through it? Expect to learn about what spirituality is, how the conscious and unconscious mind are linked to spirituality, how to become aware of your negative patterns, how to operate from love, not fear, why recognizing different parts of ourselves that are hidden away in the subconscious is the key to the life we want, and so much more. Boris is one of the most wise people I've spoken with, and this conversation went deep into spirituality, the subconscious mind, and how to make positive changes in your life. So much value in this episode. I know you'll enjoy. This podcast is proudly sponsored by RecLab, Perth's ultimate recovery centre. Now, it has everything your body needs. It's got ice baths, magnesium hot pools, steam room, sauna, compression boots, hyperbaric chamber. However, it also has incredible people. It's one of my favourite things about the place. Good people, great facilities, and it gives you the opportunity to rejuvenate and recharge. Life gets busy, life gets stressful, and it's the perfect place to reset. If you use the code TM20, you'll get a 20% discount on casual visits, and I'll link it in the show notes below. This podcast is part of my personal mission to create lasting change in the world through real conversations. If you enjoy this episode, it will mean a lot to me if you can click the follow button, press the three dots in the profile, and also click rate show. These things do matter, and they go a long way to spreading these messages, and it makes me smile. So thank you. Boris Walter, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
How does that tie in? I feel like something with, I think, at least on my journey, I've almost believed that spirituality is something to be created, not something to be found and discovered.
Mm. So you say spirituality should be created?
No, I think it's something that we all have within us.
Yeah.
But I think the illusion is spirituality is something to do and create. I think especially now with Western practices of meditation and all of these things that we can do, and it's become almost material and visible.
Yeah.
So I think there's almost this illusion now that, spirituality is something that is physically obtainable.
Yeah, good point. So it's like the human ego will always reign supreme if that's where you're at. And so no matter what you do, if it's spirituality, but you have a primality still with the ego trying to grab onto the world, as in my value and love in this world is found outside of myself, then you'll operationalize your need for spirituality. It'll be found out there. And so that's the trick. Yeah, it's a paradox. You're right, because you can't do a bunch of things that then makes you spiritual, So all the meditation classes that you go to, all the retreats, and I did this thing, and you can see the evidence. And when people say, well, I did the thing, I did the ayahuasca thing, I did the mushroom thing, it's like now I should be healed. It almost like comes as a spiritual badge, badge of honor that I've done all these things. And it's not wrong that, I don't dismiss these things because they're beautiful, but what you find in them is perspective and truth. That's the point of spirituality, is perspective and truth. It's not something you can keep doing. Like I heard someone say, I've done 20 ayahuasca journeys. I said, man, well done. I think that's what he was after, was a clap, but that was to serve his ego in that moment. But if you haven't got the message the first or second time, it's like, why, you probably shouldn't go the next 18 times. Because there's a perspective in all of those experiences. That's the seeking of truth, God, love, spirituality is perspective, to recognize yourself. Everything is within. And when you settle the body into that understanding, you'll stop pursuing it in terms of the amount of things I need to do or attain out there to then satiate my egoic need to be spiritual. That will only serve the egoic part of you, but it's like, what humility are you finding in those practices? What virtues are you acquiring in those things? What kind of courage and power? How much of your philosophy is shifting about how you make sense of the world? How much are you blaming versus now forgiving? These are spiritual. the application of all those things, not the amount of things that you do, and then put that on your resume.
What is spirituality? Like, I think
Mm.
everyone has a different perspective on
Yeah.
what spirituality actually entails. What would your
Yeah.
perspective be?
Well, do you have an idea what you would define it as?
That's a great counter.
Yeah.
I think spirituality is about sort of our understanding of things outside of us, like our who we are relative in relation to the world. I think it's all like it's sort of we've been conditioned into seeing the world through our empirical senses, through our senses, and being able to make meaning and interpretation of the world through what we can accumulate, see, use science for, test. And I think spirituality is sort of like outside of that, which is it's things greater than the physical. It's something we can't test empirically, but it is like something greater than that. That
So spirituality is the unseen.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I feel there is 100%. There's a connection because the spirituality connects to our physical experience. But I'm trying to find like how you define, how you separate. So how would you separate? What is spirituality, and then how does it connect to what we can actually observe?
Maybe, okay, what we can observe maybe, this is often, so the characteristics of spirituality is, first people need to understand it's oneness, right? So the essence of spirit is to go beyond the illusions of separation. So you're you, Egan, and I'm Boris. So at this moment in time, we're separate. At least the illusion is that. But there's a fundamental belief that we are connected and it's meaningful. And so it's worthy of integrating that idea. So if we apply how does one live spiritually, you look at the virtues, right? Compassion, kindness. The idea is because if I appreciate that you are me, and I am you, then your pain is my pain, your success is my success. And to live like that is a powerful way to have dominion over this vessel. I mean, to have control over this body and its chemistry. To live in that level of chemistry, because those virtues to be applied and felt, it optimizes everything in this body, right? And so it's not like an objective truth that you just should be like this because of some morality. No, it's because of what happens is you're honoring this one thing, that we're all moving in one direction. We're all learning about ourselves. And if I apply these virtues, there is more synchronicities, there is more love, there's that bond between people. So it's as if it's like a spiritual ethic, to apply and live virtuously. And so that spirituality is the appreciation of that. I can't see those things, and it's not obvious that I need to act out those things, but the harmony with the universe, the harmony with flow, the freedom that entails if I live virtuously and I act courageously, forthrightly. I'm close to my heart, it's calling. These things are hard to objectify as just the right way to be in this world, and it's contextual with religions, but there's something powerful in the evidence of that application. So I always try to first, before I get into the metaphysical aspects of what then determines that we, or the evidence that we're more than the physical, to always just position that virtue as the highest of spirituality, this idea of oneness, and to at least appreciate the illusion of this physicality, and that we are more than this, and that we see synchronicities and things that are happening that suggest that we are connected.
What's the simplest way that someone can understand that there is something greater than our own physical experience? I think people are so caught up in their own life.
Yeah.
Living for themselves, getting a career. But how do we understand or appreciate that there is more than our own first person experience?
Yeah. Okay, good question. You've got, okay, if I was to rely and say my physicality is the highest of principles of this world, what is most real in this world is physicalism. And therefore, if I believe that, I should be able to predict with just the right amount of tools and measurements, I should be able to predict outcomes That's where psychology comes in, right? Because we honor the medical, we honor the physicality. And so therefore we have some predictable power in psychology and medical intervention. But then we have these outliers, the outliers. You've been in love before?
Yes.
Have you ever said, it's like, I'd never do this, or I can't ever see myself doing that, or liking that type of person, or even acting that way? And then you fall in love. And then you see yourself in the most unpredictable way ever. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
All right. Good or bad, unpredictability characterizes love. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
That's scary, right? So then you'll see a separation between the physical world and then the essence of love as the ultimate thing in this world, but it can't be measured. Right? There's no marker for love, right? We have a word for this thing that creates a bond between two people, this magnetism, and we scratch our head constantly in this world throughout the ages as to why. Why is this happening? Why am I foregoing everything that I thought was real, my highest of principles, in the pursuit of love or in the reaction of love, right? It determines humanity's trajectory is love, and it can't be measured. It's the unseen. It's the ineffable. We call it love, but it's a metaphysical phenomena, and it transcends any predictive power we have in the physical world, right? So people just need to understand that separation, that the unseen world determines more of the physical world. Consciousness comes first. Memories. Where are your memories? Do you know where your memories are?
Hippocampus?
Okay, so if I cut open your hippocampus, where is it in your hippocampus? If I say, where's July 15th, 2019?
Cell 170,224.
Right. No, good point. Because
that's reductive.
We think it's in that cell or something like that, right? And so we believe it's like a hard drive. But no, the hippocampus lights up, let's say, what you're talking about for memory recall. But it doesn't mean it's physically stored in there. We can't cut open any part of your hippocampus like a hard drive and say, there it is in cell 2,700, whatever. It doesn't exist. So it's not bound. Your memories aren't bound in any physical thing that we can point to under any microscope. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We can't do it. It just means that the brain part of your brain lights up as a correlated function or mechanism when you are acting out memory recall. Okay, that's a good way to think about it. It's correlated. The causal thing is another, that's where the arguments are philosophically and scientifically. But it's not in your physical brain. We can't see it. It just activates. So cool, we appreciate the physical nature because it activates. Thank you, hippocampus, let's say. But because it's not physical, it's not pointed in any cell, we can't find it. It means it's etheric, for lack of a better word. It's unseen. It's an energy. It's a field. It's somewhere, because you can say, if I ask you, did you have breakfast this morning?
Yeah.
Okay, you can recall what you had for breakfast this morning.
Yeah.
All right, but if we can't physically find it anywhere in your body, right, it's somewhere we have to give another word to. Where is it? The etheric, the field, the ether, it's somewhere else, but you seem to have dominion over it. You have the power to go into whatever that thing is, this memory bank, even though it's not physical, but you can go there. The point is, how much does memory dictate your reality? Because you remember how to speak, you remember who your father is, you remember what you had for breakfast, you remember how to drive to a certain location, you remember what people look like, right? Opposed to a baby entering the world for the first time. It's like your memories, how much of your memories dictate and stabilize this world, your identity, right? Massive, right? It's unseen, meaning it's not stored in physical. So it's an etheric place or a field, a bank, let's say, in the unseen realm that actually determines like the entire projected reality of your physical realm is your memories. How you determine whether you go left, right, up, down, react, not react is your memories. And yet it's not found in the physical body.
So how does that link to practically living our life? Because from what most people understand, that we go through experiences, they start to shape our beliefs, and these beliefs operate as a filter of how we see the world. How does spirituality connect
To that.
into this realm of who we are and our identity. Because while your point talks about not being able to, your point makes it clear that there is something greater than this reductive model of interpreting the world.
Yeah. Why is that powerful?
Why is that powerful? How does it count? Yeah.
Good question, Egan. So it counts because if you have a problem, what's the first thing you do? If you have a problem in your life,
how can I fix it?
Correct. So you have to go in diagnostics, right? Whether it's your sprinkler's busted out in the front yard, someone has to go and find out the problem. Now, you know that if the sprinkler breaks out the front, there's only a few areas that you need to look, right? You're not going to go start looking at the beach, right? That would be overwhelming if I don't even know where to start looking, right? Okay, so the physical world, right? If I believe fundamentally that all I am is a bunch of molecules and atoms, cells, muscle tissue, bone structure, protein, then I'm going to only look in the physical realm for all of my diagnostics, right? So how convenient that the medical industry that has a pill for you, the pharmaceutical industry that can't wait to prescribe you something, will tell you at the same time that all your problems we found in the chemical realm, the biological realm, stop looking elsewhere. Why? Well, it's bad for business. But you are more than the physical, right? You are so much more. You can change an idea, a thought. You can remember something, not remember something, change the meaning of a memory, which is not in physical. It's pure perspective shift. You can change a story at any given moment, and your physicality changes accordingly. You start telling me the best day you ever had in your life, you watch your body light up chemically, right? You go back to one of your worst memories, you tell me, okay, well, this person did me wrong. How dare they? Blame them. They hurt me. They're scary. And I guess say, hey, man, they gave you the best gift of your life. They made you strong. They made you powerful. They compelled you into action in this area of your life. Hey, yeah, man, I didn't realize that. One moment of a perspective shift and your chemistry and your recall of that memory shifts entirely at a subconscious level. None of that. Well, it has biological correlates. It correlates to the body. But you did a perspective shift. It's a story of the mind. It's nowhere in biology. If I get you to constantly do that every day with every negative part of your life, to look at the positive aspect of every negative you saw in your life, imagine the joy, the laughter, the playfulness that would go through your body, the chemistry, signatures of that. And the only way you went about that is literally stories. So if there's something for someone to take away from this, it's like we look into the unseen realms because stories matter. The energetic signatures of your mind, your memories, how you relate to the world. These are all in the unseen realms, and it's only your responsibility. I can tell you a bunch of things, but only you can choose to shift the way you choose to see something, right? But that choosing, no one can give you a pill or adjust something here to make you choose something differently, to shift a perspective. That is everything. It's more fundamental than physicality. That's my view.
How do we prove that it has significance? The spirituality, this greater than what we can observe, has significance because we have a tangible problem, unhappy relationships, we don't have the job we want, we have all of these things in our life. How can we integrate spirituality into our problems to realize that looking into getting more of a bird's eye view and a different perspective using this spirituality, because I think our mind has been conditioned into looking for tangible solutions, and that's why the medical world is able to sell pills, because it's here's a problem, here's a solution. But how do we actually start to, for beginners who don't even, grasp this concept, how can we appreciate the significance of how the mind and how spirituality is all connected to these physical ailments that we're experiencing?
Awesome, man. Good questions. Okay. This is a good connection to what we're speaking about. What is ultimately spiritual is virtue, right? To see you as me and I am you. And that harmony and that appreciation and what that does to the virtuous person. It's also spiritual to accept your death, to realize the finiteness of this life, and I continue on, but to honor this flesh. And if I was to be aware of my death, I would then get on with the most meaningful thing in this moment, right? Okay. That's what it means to be spiritual, ultimately. I'm leaving aside all the phenomenal, metaphysical, parapsychological, ghosty stuff.
Yeah.
That's aside. But ultimately, it should always, this is truly spiritual. And then we linked it to the chemical signatures of what happens to someone if they shift from a negative to a positive, right? A simple story change. Imagine going from blame to forgiveness, like proper forgiveness, to then gratitude, right? Imagine it's like, no, this person deserves this because they did this to me. How dare they, right? That's so immoral. The injustice, that of the body. All right, so in this moment, for anyone listening, it's like, look at your body in that moment. In anger, frustration, you're driving your car, this dude cut me off. This mother, how dare he, right? He's disrespecting me right now. So look at the stories that are being formulated. He disrespected me. You know, he thinks he's more important than me, gets to go in front of me, and he's, whatever goes through your mind, look at this is the pause. This is the ultimate thing.
Just shift it across a little bit. Or you just drag that. If you do this one,
Yeah.
you can either let it go or just probably just a tiny bit more over it, just because like when it goes to the side, it's just going to...
Oh, I didn't even notice. Yeah.
Nah, it's all good. It's just...
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So look at the chemical signatures of that perspective shift. Now, this is what I want like people to actually understand is they have a moment of choice. The spirituality, here's probably the most significant part of the embodiment of spirituality. This is what everyone bloody misses. Is I'm going to say the most important thing of what is spiritual in terms of the embodiment. Your divinity lies in the threshold, the space between a stimulation and your response. The pause is the divinity, is to choose in any given moment, right? To choose anything, to go left, to go right, to get angry, to not get angry, right? That choice is your divinity. So the capacity to say anything, do anything, is your divine responsibility. And then when you become conscious, which might be touched on later, when someone becomes conscious, you are becoming closer to spirituality. And that then means you have dominion, or you are separate from your primal impulse. My impulse says, punch this dude out. My spirit, or my awareness of this moment right now, this space between stimulation and response, is this capacity to pause, contemplate outcomes, apply virtue based on what I would rather experience in this world. I would rather experience, for the optimization of this body and life, positive chemistry, love, right? Joy, just because it's better for everything and everyone. So if I choose that and I want more harmony in my life, more success, then having a positive vibration in my body is optimal. So if I have any power whatsoever, I should choose anything that leads me to that experience and chemical signature than anything else, right? So the application of spirituality is to become aware of that moment, right? What's happening in my body right now as I feel frustration? Pause. Apply your divinity, which is to be self-aware. I'm aware of what's happening in my body right now, and I know I have choice. I can choose to get angry. All these years, I actually just chose to get angry. Okay, cool. That's surrender. First stage, surrender. Next, once you surrender to what is just existing, no, I'm just really angry right now, or I'm really just feeling hurt, grief, whatever it is right now is deep inside me, surrender that it exists. Then you move to acceptance. I'm going to take you through a little step-by-step thing. Acceptance is stage 2. In that acceptance, what am I accepting? That it's finished. It is spiritual to understand that yesterday actually doesn't exist anymore. Your past is held in your memory bank, right? Maybe there's some photos of it, but it actually doesn't exist anymore, right? The future doesn't exist either. That's why they talk about the eternal or the infinite now. It's just, that's all you live in, is the infinite now. And you hold memories as a fragment of the past, but it doesn't exist outside of the illusions of your mind, okay? So in that moment there, the acceptance that the past is finished. This person has left me. It's done. Okay, yep. I got angry and I really just wanted to hurt them back. Okay, the acceptance of whatever's going on in the body, in my operation, the past, is that acceptance is so crucial. You don't get to good outcomes without that acceptance part. Forget gratitude, forgiveness, all the beautiful chemistry that comes with that, the joy of life. If you're still holding on to resentment, frustration, injustice, a behavioral tally card, a scorecard of behavior, they did me more wrong, some moral scorecard of who's more righteous and who's not. That's not a good way to go. That's believing that the physical world and its morality is more primary, but it's spiritual to transcend that and accept that this is a child of the earth as well. And there is something powerful in the learning here, perspective shift. Okay, cool. That one perspective shift is to then be above this and realize that my true reality is the chemical that are running through my body. And if I go about my life calculating and judging and blaming based on behavioral scorecards, it only leads this chemistry to frustration, resentment, anger, blame, shame, guilt. I'm good, they're good, I'm bad, they're bad. What it does to the chemical signatures, you're losing. So the spiritual man or woman transcends that. They don't live on that behavioral scorecard.
How do you transcend the scorecard when it's those experiences create such strong visceral emotions and memories and stories that are so imprinted into who you are and who you think you are, and you start living through the lens of the past, and you start creating stories and narratives at a subconscious level too in your life. How do we sort of relinquish this control that the past has on us and become aware that we are being limited by the past?
I would say that it's to be aware of what was unresolved. So this common knowledge of I have unresolved trauma, let's say, right? I was traumatized, therefore my behaviors are like this. And then what it looks like at surface value is that this event caused these behaviors. And that's why it's easy to prescribe things. It's easy to create treatment methods around that because that caused this. So that was a Freudian argument in the psychoanalysis. The causal nature of parental conflict, let's say, creates a certain dynamic which has predictive power in your adult romantic relationships and behaviors, same with attachment theory. So we see that, but there's always these areas where it's like, oh, that didn't work out. It's not 100% accurate in terms of predictive power. That other part is the phenomenal part, right? And so you want to be in that area where you're no longer predicted by your trauma. I have transcended it. It doesn't dictate my behaviors. That is literally the examination of the stories and conclusions that you've made about yourself, about others, which formed an identity of that timeline that your ego is holding onto for dear life. And it seeks to just repeat that dynamic. So that's the karmic loop. It's the presenting past. It's stuck patterns. It's that timeline still trying to play itself out. So you want to look, okay, I have this tendency that every time I go into a relationship, I want to control their behavioral movements. I don't like it when they go out. I don't like it when they talk to the opposite sex, right? So I want to control their movements. Why do I do that? And we'll see it sometimes when we get angry. Damn it. This time I was trying to be different. I'm noticing myself still do it. Why do I do that? Of course, because I've felt the pain in the past. I didn't like that. It didn't feel good. And now my ego is making sure I don't feel that again. Go ahead and find out one of the original wounds. What is the greatest catastrophe? What is the thing that I'm most catastrophizing in that moment? Because your ego is the thing that's on the feedback loop of just behavioral patterns that seem stuck. You have to find out what's the catastrophe here, because I guarantee you it's not real. Like it doesn't exist. There's a lie in that catastrophizing. The catastrophe is, well, if I don't control their movements, they'll run away. They'll find someone better than me. They might say to you, okay, cool. All right, here's where the empathy should come in. You feel for that person because that's like a younger person. Okay, how you want to ask, like, even yourself, how far back did I start saying something like that? It could be earlier partner. It could be a parental figure where they chose someone else over me. It could be another partner. It could be another sibling, whatever it might be, or they just left and disappeared. And there is this fundamental belief because that child or that adolescent in that relationship concluded that if I don't physically see this person, there is a high risk that they leave me. Okay, then what? Well, I'm left lonely. There's the core. Lonely, isolated, that whatever feelings come with that, the sensory experience of that, the worst feelings ever. So what do? The ego has to be employed to make sure you never feel that again, right? And so it'll start giving you these behavioral tendencies to make sure the past never presents again. But what does it do? It keeps repeating the same thing, and you scratch your head wondering why. So get clear on the catastrophe and then check, is it real? Does it really apply here, or is it nothing to do with this person? Then it's courage, because a lot of people can get to that point as well. Oh yeah, I've done the healing. I went to my psych. I know why I'm doing it. I'm just scared. But the courage to act now on what you know to be true, that's what's missing. So you can find out a flaw in your behavior, your belief system. Oh, I just have this fear that they're going to leave me. Your partner's telling you, I'm not leaving you. I'm just my friends. Just let me go hang out with my friends. But there's this part of you that's like, ugh, and don't let them go. What if the what ifs? It takes courage, because this, you have all the evidence in this moment that they're not leaving you, but they might. You always run the risk, and that's the risk of love. You don't get to control that person's behavior because it doesn't lead to love. And then you have to have the courage to just act out what you know to be ethically true in the pursuit of love, which is freedom.
What I've noticed in my life, to get an insight into my subconscious mind and the patterns I've fallen into, is actually, you taught me this in the last episode, was about my reactivity. And that gives you an insight into how much your subconscious mind is filtering your experience. I spoke with Mitchell Vicarage the other day, and we spoke a lot about how like the outside world is very neutral, but it's our mind which creates this story, which creates the emotional charge. And if you can identify areas in your life, things that so-called trigger you and create this emotionality or felt experience, that can give you an insight into what programs are being run inside. Because ever since you told me that, I've been noticing things I instantly become reactive to, where my ego gets in play, which was like a first step. Because like, until you become, one of my favorite quotes is like, until you make the conscious, it'll direct your life and you'll call it fate. Carl Jung. I feel like that has spoken true to my life. Like, until I become aware of these programs or these patterns that are happening in my life, you know, I create this story of these constraints and limitations, but they're only just belief systems that I've fallen into. But identifying patterns was a powerful first step.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm glad you said that, man. Look, and that's music to my ears, man, when I hear a young guy like yourself just becoming more aware. So the first stage into, say, spirituality or consciousness, becoming a conscious being, or Carl Jung's talking about becoming it's individuation process, it's called as well. But what that does is it gives you, the first step is awareness. I become aware that, firstly, I'm creating this world and my experiences more than I thought. The other alternative that I thought before, which I thought was fate, is these people are doing this to me. The world is doing this to me. So it's the illusion that there's no responsibility. And what that does, why it's not a good idea, I mean, it's easier to say this person and that thing over there, or that behavior, or that memory made me this way. What that does is obfuscate all responsibility. And in that obfuscation of responsibility, you have no power. So while it might be easy for the egoic mind to uphold an identity of facade, it doesn't give you any power. And that's why we say the conscious mind or the conscious man is ideal over an unconscious body, because the unconscious man is constantly surprised by his outcomes. His life is always surprising him, and he scratches his head, why does this keep happening? Why do these relationship patterns keep happening? It's like I'm cursed. It's like the universe is against me, right? So it's naivety. Unconsciousness is naive to all the things in my subconscious that is actually perpetuating these dynamics in my life, and it's me.
It seems quite paradoxical. The more conscious you become, the more control you have. But the illusion is that you have more control when you are living through your ego, because you're trying to, you know, your belief system is trying to create control, because our nervous system craves predictability. So it has all these belief systems to try and protect you, but you are constantly living in this illusion that you don't have more control. How does that all tie in together with spirituality? Like, how does someone grasp this, what we're talking about, and actually take it into like a first step? Obviously, becoming aware is a first step.
Yeah.
But how much is it like, how do we dissolve the past and these patterns that keep playing out versus like wiring in new beliefs? And like there's this, I feel like there's this tension between like removing the past, but it's like, that's all I know. That's all. So what, I have to surrender to the uncertainty of the future. But now you're also telling me I have more control. It's like the attachments we have, this identity of the past gives us this structure, this framework of living. It's comfortable. How do we surrender to this idea that, you know, the future is uncertain, but we also have more control within this realm of possibility? I think there's like this sort of these opposites occurring at the same time.
Yeah. There was probably about 3 different angles I could go in that from what you've just said. Firstly, I think, the awareness. Okay, I like your paradox. So spirituality is all about paradoxes, and so you've just pointed one out, because the duality of the physical, the egoic mind, meaning the prioritization of all things I can see and feel and sense through my 5 senses, the physical realm. Those that identify more with that realm will go about controlling their anxieties, satiating their discomfort through physical means, domination of the physical realm, whether it's another person in relationships, friend relationships, workplace, get more money, more status, anything external to satiate. It could be medication, any distractions as well, to satiate the discomfort within. It's control. I seek control, but I only know the physical world. Spirituality links in to the relinquishing. So the ego gives the illusion of control externally, but why that's not a good long-term strategy is because nature will always humble you. Your logical mind cannot fathom the true nature of this reality. I can't. It'll always humble you. And so we don't need to argue that in any capacity, because every book we've ever read, if it's worth its weight in spirituality, it'll tell you the same thing, that we are naive to the movements of this world, and it'll always humble you. Okay, so probably don't try to grasp the world attaching to things to satiate it. There is
surrender. So we have to somehow surrender our, logical minds need to grasp a concrete understanding of it.
Unless your desired outcome is of the physical realm, meaning I want to build a business and it demands this level of movement and behaviors around that, right?
That's where most people want to integrate spirituality, is to use spirituality as a vessel to achieve something in the physical domain.
Yep. So I'll show you how I've linked it with some CEOs that I've worked with, right? Because it's a very physical world, the corporate realm, right? It's very very dense, right? And it's all about building the business. So my work with that domain is all about how do we actually have physical outcomes. So there's evidence, but to have a transcendental belief underneath that, which is partly to let go of the things that you can't actually control. One example, one CEO ruminating every night on the things he needs to do and that he should have done better, the things that plague him in the future, decisions he has to make, and it keeps a man up at night, let's say. But say to relinquish the things that he can't control in that moment would be ideal, right? So a choice in that moment is to just honor what is in my control versus not control. Another thing is, say, the awareness. If we bring them more to the awareness side of things, a CEO in that world, he wants to have better communication within his leaders or within his company, so that more information can flow with clarity and understanding. Things just run better. Now, if there's fear, judgment, tally cards, behavioral judgments, everyone's holding on to their own traumas as well and projecting onto everyone, you got stagnant information everywhere in there. Things that aren't flowing from a true place. When we want to connect at a true place, right? Authenticity, the heart, like who are you really, right? If we can get there in a company with all of your leaders, imagine that, transcending all of your egoic drives, the impulses of that, being a victim of your circumstances because you don't know your unconscious realm, you're just reacting to everything. It's chaos, and that's just how we operate. It's what we've accepted. So I'm taking them, and it's like, apply a spiritual understanding where it's like, watch what happens when your body, your vessel, is in virtue. When I take you through the awareness of your own unconscious patterns, when you submit, forgive those that have hurt you, eventually through to gratitude, going from awareness, acceptance, surrender, acceptance, forgiveness, courage, to then gratitude. It's like, watch what happens. And then when they understand themselves, they can, because they're the gravity, the CEO is the gravity of that entity, that company. Everyone else around them starts to change and shift according because of the gravity, but also his level of understanding and empathy for another being, because I am you, you are me. We're actually playing a game here, even though we're looking for money outcomes, but there's something about the journey. Here's another spiritual idea. It's about the journey, not the destination. Why does everyone keep saying that? Who cares? Watch what happens when you apply that journey understanding. Yeah, but Boris, I've got goals. I need targets. We got monetary targets here. I get that. But watch what happens if you forego the appreciation of the now, what's available to you now, because of the chemical signatures and the mindset of just being grateful of what's unfolding in the infinite now for some better future. It's like...
Is it like, how does that link into this concept of abundance? People think abundance is having, or like creating or finding. People want to create abundance, but abundance just is, right? Like it's the removal of this. Because like as soon as we create this goal to have something, we've created this energetic lack within ourselves. Like I want to be, it's like saying I want I want freedom, whatever sort of that looks, financially, emotionally. You're sort of wiring into yourself, or spirit, or like an energetic level, you're wiring in that you don't have that. You're creating this lack, which is creating this distance and gap between what you have to what you think you need to have, rather than focusing and appreciating what you do have. But how do you integrate this like concept of focusing on what you do have, creating chemical signatures which almost start to attract this more into your life, because it is so the fears feel so tangible and real, and these pressures that are created by the mind. How do we even grasp this concept of letting go of it, tapping into the abundance of what we have, being grateful for what we have, but also striving for more? Like there's this real tension between, what we have and then where we want to go to.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, so if say you're at a business, or you're, any kind of task or mission you're on, and say you've tried one strategy for so long and it's not working, I mean, it's pretty wise to probably not do that anymore, right? It's like, we've got to try something else. So I think by simply looking at what's not working would be the start of understanding why we should do that thing that you just said, right? So it's look at what fear does. So the excessive prioritization of controlling the physical realm through fear, and the what I have not, through that mechanism, where does it lead to? If everyone slows down in this moment and just looks at the way that they have applied that philosophy, that I don't have enough, or I don't, that person, that partner needs to be here, because it's like I don't have their love if they're somewhere else, physically need to be close to me. They need to, all of this excessive attachment to future outcomes, and not actually in the vibration of appreciation and gratitude now. The consequence is there is a nervous grabbing onto everything around me, and in that fear, you push it away by default, right? So there's something about the chemical signatures about the now that count. And so whatever it takes to get to that understanding and application is ideal. Look at I'm afraid of this partner leaving me. I'm going to excessively, so this future vision of I need her to love me. It's an excessive act maybe where we're trying to hold them close, but imagine the amount of egoic dancing that the male, let's say, because it's in nature, males tend to do all the dancing and like the peacocking. Imagine the amount of fluff and nervousness and acting that we might do to win the attraction for some future vision that maybe they'll say yes. All right. A lot of nervousness goes into that, right? Into the future vision of something better than now. That's a great way of just applying that same belief, whether it's a money projection or a romantic relationship. Same thing. It's the foregoing of my chemistry now in an egoic way to then hope for a better future that maybe then
that's the thing I always ask people when people are trying so hard in their life in whatever domain, they're sacrificing the thing they want in order to achieve something to give them what they already have. So they forego their happiness, their freedom, their all of these emotions that they're trying to create, their peace, whatever you want to call it. People forego the thing they want in order to achieve something to give them the same thing, rather than trying to focus on appreciating what they do have. How do you balance this with being pragmatic? Because I feel like spirituality and pragmatism have this there's this almost opposition where people are like, oh, spirituality, it's something I want to integrate more. I want, meditating, but I've got, bills to pay. I've got this trauma from the past. How do you actually balance taking through someone on a realistic spiritual journey to actually create I feel like when people discover the profundity of spirituality, it can sort of click things into gear. But how do you speak to someone at their own level without trying to, make them, because I feel like if you go too far and you try and coach them or teach them these spiritual concepts, it can go in one ear and out the other.
You can't force it, man. Yeah. Life. Yeah, you can't force life, man. I mean, the life force that runs through any individual, this is spiritual. It's sovereign. You're sovereign. You're a sovereign being. It's up to you to honor that. And I should honor that if I seek that same in return, right? That's a fundamental law of spirituality, the sovereignty of an individual, which is why it's in constitutions, because there was a spiritual aspect to constitutions in the origins. If you're a sovereign being, then I can't force nothing, right? And so if you're finding yourself having to coach it into someone, you need this. It's like you may as well be a Bible basher, of the past, a religious dogma that I'm trying to force down your throat. No. It's a question. What do you want to experience in this world? If I just start here, this is really powerful for people to start here. What do you want to experience in this world, right now? Or I want to experience love, or I want to experience freedom. I want to stop panicking. I want to stop being nervous. I would rather experience so-and-so. All right, then it's what's happening in your life? Look at the way you're making sense of it, the way you're acting about it to achieve what you think you want, right? And tell me, is it working? No, it's not working. All right. So in this moment, before any spiritual doctrine or methods or concepts are applied here, pragmatically, can you agree that it's not working for you? Okay, cool. All right. Now if you're open to it, you can offer these concepts and ideas that I've just spoken about by the excessive prioritization of the egoic mind and the physical world and trying to control the physical world. It's a never-ending thing, and you'll never win. All right. So it's pragmatic and sensible and intelligent to actually look for another domain. There is a better way. And so you offer them a better way. And that better way is if you forego the injustice, the tally card, the scorecard of behavior, this person, that person, judgment and of all behaviors, I'm bad, they're good. Let go of all that. But Boris, they did that thing to me. Yeah, I hear you. I get it. So it doesn't feel logical in that moment to forgive that person. I mean, you can think of the worst possible things people can do to someone else. I've worked with these people, absolute victims, They did not deserve the things that had happened to them. What am I telling them? While they get angry at these people, if I'm sitting there validating constantly without giving them a window to be in a better state of mind, then I'm only perpetuating the suffering, right? So if I stay at a social injustice level, which is morality, and what's good and evil of the human realm, they don't actually have an opportunity. I'm saying, here, man, stay angry because that person's messed up. How dare they? Or here's a spiritual idea. Your true reality happens inside the chemistry of your body. It happens in your emotional world, in the stories of your mind. if I say to you that just see that person as an innocent child of the world, and they're actually here to just help you. They're actually here to give you an opportunity to develop a capacity that humanity will one day need from you, you know, and you're going to be a great person in that capacity. And if it wasn't for that wounding there, you know, you wouldn't have been this great. If you can draw that link and say, yeah, watch what happens to your capacities and your movement, your motivation, because you're no longer bogged down by the resentment, frustration, blame that comes with that injustice. See, it's not logical. It doesn't feel intuitively right to forgive some things that people have done that are really bad. But if you believe transcendentally that forgiveness is actually a better way to get what you actually want in this world, then you have to forego the injustice, the measurement of good and evil. Many are not ready to do that. And so I'm not going to tell them to do it. I'm not going to force that. I have to see if you're ready or not, because many prefer to cling on to that. That's why it's not easy. It's not easy because you have to forego any part of you that is unseen, the part of you that really needs to be validated by the public, that I was hurt, that was unjust, you know, I'm a victim, whatever that thing was. Or you have to forego that part to actually then just
Do we have
receive that.
Do we have I feel like I've, at parts of my journey, definitely feel like I'm letting go of this, but created this like spiritual ego, which is like, I've become more conscious on my journey, and it's like, it creates this energy of like, I have the answers, or come to the light. How do you distinguish between the love of that and like, I'm trying to empower and create love and abundance for everyone? So my mission is to help people see the world in a different light, see themselves in a different light, stop these cycles and patterns playing out, versus the part of myself which needs the validation because I can't stand alone on my own mission, because it can get lonely, like when your environment doesn't support or appreciate your own journey. And people are going through so many different journeys on them, like they feel lonely. They're not lonely, but they feel lonely. How can they sort of navigate this journey of like recognizing that they don't need others to validate them, but it's difficult because like the spiritual ego sort of comes in and wants validation for what you have.
Yeah, imagine you could talk to God. You have a conversation with something that knows you way better than you know yourself. Someone that knows everything about you. Imagine that. It could be like a spirit guide, you call it your higher self, doesn't matter. For the sake of what it can do, play the game. And let's just call it God. God says, I hear you. You're upset. You're hurt. Cool. What do you want in this world? Well, I want abundance. I want to live free. I want love. I want to feel powerful in this world. I want to have joy. I want to play freely. Okay, cool. All right. Well, then you have to let go of all those things. You have to actually just forgive everyone and go beyond forgiveness. It's actually just gratitude for everyone that's ever hurt you. Why? Why should I do that? Well, because of the chemical signatures that determine your reality. So from your subconscious, from your ultimate beliefs at the deepest level, which is I'm hurt and I'm a victim and they deserve punishment, you will create from that. So you'll experience suffering. Oh, okay. But they hurt me and they deserve, okay, what level do you want to play at here? What do you want to experience again? Joy, abundance, all that. Okay, all right. They don't go together. So what do you mean? Yeah, that means that part of you that needs validation is a younger part of you that doesn't exist anymore. A second ago doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist outside your mind. And if that doesn't exist outside your mind, that means it's only living in the illusion of your mind, and therefore you are choosing to hold on to it because of the stories of injustice and all these things, and you're seeking validation. Cool, I hear you, but what do you want to experience? It's just a choice. And so this individual now says, damn it, I only have two options. Now there is no judgment, say from any higher position, as to the speed at which you transition into your spirituality, which is the relinquishing of all social tallies of good and evil, right? Now here's where therapy would come into it, let's say. Someone comes to therapy, says exactly what this person's saying. You know, this person did me wrong. My mum did this to me. My dad did that to me. My partner did this to me. So it's like that part of them as a child never got honored, was never heard, never considered, never asked the question, how are you experiencing this breakup, right? No one asked this poor child a question. So now here they are as a 30-year-old and they're saying, you know, no, they did this wrong thing to me. And, you know, their little girl, little boy inside them right now is just seeking fulfillment for all the times they never got heard. And if this individual soul right now needs or wants, is a better word, wants to experience that validating process first, go ahead. It's like that's where the counselors, you'll see them empathically mirroring them and really letting someone feel heard. So that, but as long as you're clear, like the awakened person realizes that's not really me and that person doesn't actually exist. The little girl, little boy in me doesn't actually exist anymore, but I'm going to play out an old timeline just for the sake of having that experience that I never got to have. If I kid myself and thinking that that's the solution, then I'll be better. Once I just get valid, you've lost it. You've missed it. You missed the point. It's like, no, you're trying to relive an old timeline. That means you're validating the past. That means you're not in the here and now. That means you're not in spirituality. If you seek freedom, it's like you eventually acknowledge with this person, okay, now that that little part of you's been acknowledged, heard, now we move forward on the spectrum of love. Okay, yep, you weren't heard. They did these things. And it's necessary because that individual may have had words they never got to say. What did you really want to say to mum? You know, it's like, oh, no, they did the best they can and it was all good. You know, everyone tried their best and, you know, I don't blame them. And there's a fear of like being evil or being bad or losing the parent. So they don't judge them. They don't want to say anything bad about the parent. And that's how they've had to construct their ego. So they've denied anger. They've denied a low vibration. So sometimes it's actually necessary for them to integrate that shadow, that darker side of them. Go on, say the thing you really want to say to mum and dad. Fuck you, mum, you know, you never once asked me a question. You never asked me how I was going. Yes, keep going. And you watch that timeline, which has been fragmented and stuck in the past, they're actually releasing energy signals from that. So there is a warranted exploration of the past and its content, emotional content, because it's creating stuckness. But that's not the end. You have to move through to then forgiveness. Okay, cool. Enjoy that and then let it go. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it does, 100%.
You have to move them through love, essentially, is the spectrum. So that's probably something someone needs to hang on to, is that your healing is no different and can be measured by the spectrum of love. How much am I moving from guilt, shame, fear, all things fear, you know, resentment, frustrations, anger, stress, tension, jealousy.
How do you something I want to stress on here is how to become aware whether you're operating from love or fear. I think people find it hard to discern the difference.
Oh, yeah. One, be willing to accept that you are lying to yourself is like, okay, then it'll allow you the curiosity to just check in, to have an honest question. I say to people, just check in for a moment. Just check. You know, you're saying, oh, no, this thing just needed to happen, you know, but it's all good, you know, like it sort of had to happen. And, you know, I'm not going to do it again. I'm just thinking of like an antisocial type behavior that they know is sort of wrong. It doesn't come from a good, true part of them. It's like more egoically driven and self-serving, but they've sort of justified it in a kind of way. And it's like you get someone to check in because everyone lies to themselves to different degrees. And the ones that think that they don't, it's like, yeah. They're the biggest lies, probably. I've noticed.
Do you ever ask the question, like, if I create enough space for myself to have a conversation, I sometimes ask myself, like, what is the, like, unconscious motive for me to do that thing? I think, like, there's always a hidden payoff that our subconscious gets, because Mitchell Vickridge in this other episode was talking about how our mind, combining the conscious and unconscious mind, always chooses things that give us the greatest advantage over disadvantage. But we wonder why we sabotage, but it's because we're unaware of our subconscious mind and how the unconscious mind gets a payoff from certain actions. Like people might not, chase their dream or, start the business, do the thing they really want to do because they're unaware of the hidden payoff, or they might sabotage their goals but that's because they're unconscious to the hidden payoff. You know, they're scared of people's judgment. They're scared of being rejected for putting their best performance out. So they do all these things to protect themselves. So is that sort of a way that people can actually, like, how would you position people to become, is that another way to segue the unconscious mind into the conscious mind?
Absolutely, yes. There's the awareness again. The awareness is to become conscious. Same thing. In that moment, what you're doing is it's like the paradox. Beautiful. Anytime you find a paradox, you're in the right place.
Okay.
So you've got someone self-sabotaging, but also there's this primal part of them that will always seek to serve themselves in some way, to do what's good or most morally right, or acquire the most resources for themselves, to win in this world. But because you're not aware of these younger parts of you that are in the subconscious realm, you don't realize that you're actually serving that part. So let's say I self-sabotage a relationship. It's not ultimately good for me, but because I'm not aware of my ultimate self, I'm not operating from my ultimate self, my true self, right? The vision of my freedom self, right? The best self. I'm operating from a younger part of me that's hurt and is in protective mode. So it's actually still doing the same thing. It's still serving me, but it's not serving me here and now. It's serving me when I was 5. It's serving a younger boy, right? So my behaviors are still trying to do the survival thing and gain dominion and resources and win to come out on top, survival stuff, but not for what's real.
Our fear brain loves thinking black or white, like run towards pleasure or away from pain. And when we think back to experiences, we think quite in concrete ways, like negatively or positively, but we don't appreciate the greyness, the good and the bad, which is life, the yin and the yang. So how can we actually start to look at a lot of our experiences and change our perception or appreciate things that we're not seeing? Because I feel like a lot of the baggage that we carry is simply from the fact that we can't see life simultaneously, like appreciate both sides of any story.
Yeah. Firstly, then it would be helpful to know why we do that. Do you know why we split the world into black and white? Why do we do that?
Through the reptilian survival, the amygdala, as a survival strategy to create simplicity and predictability for our brain.
So you could say someone that has experienced the tiger in the jungle, traumatic type things, they never want to go back there again. And so what they do is to simplify the complexity that came with the overwhelm of that traumatic experience, the trauma, then that dynamic or whatever came about that, it's I have to split it to make sure that I can make decisions, so I can keep moving. The problem is it doesn't take in the fullness, the holistic picture of any dynamic. So if someone is more black and white, you might say they're borderline type personalities in the DSM type diagnostics, bipolar, more extreme, and then DID for even more extreme. They're all just fragmentations of the mind, but a fragmentation is a splitting of the mind, also splitting into black and white, good or evil. So it begins in the self. So people split themselves first before they split the world. Remember, everything starts within. That's the spiritual idea. We're all creating from the storehouse in the subconscious realm, right? Ourself. So if I'm splitting the world out there, it's because I'm split. I mean, I've got parts of me that aren't integrated. I've got parts of me that I reject. And so I need to bring them in closer. And so we split the world into black and white. If I seek to understand the greyness of this world, the middle ground of a relationship, very helpful, very helpful. A borderline type, their partner is new, and it's their boyfriend is perfect. And I say boyfriend because it's 70% more prevalent in women having borderline traits, just a statistic. But let's just choose a woman. It's like, oh, my boyfriend's perfect, everything's perfect, and it's an over-appraisal, an over-valuation of just good behavior. It's not, but the way the person experiences it must be perfect. It must be good. And this is what happens to when clients come to therapists. This person's perfect, and attachments can build to the therapist because they're so perfect, right? But it's because they need them to be perfect in its extremity. It's easy to understand
because it's a fantasy for the mind,
fantasy,
right?
Yep. And it's satiating parts of the old parts that are split, and so they're really identifying with that hurt part that really needs this person to be perfect. All right. And then watch what happens. The boyfriend doesn't reply in time. He takes too long to reply back. This motherfucker, he's not replying to me. That must mean he's ignoring me. If he's ignoring me, that means he doesn't like me. He's got other things that are more important than me. Or if that means I'm going to be ignored. I'm eventually going to be broken up with. This guy's bad. He's evil. What an asshole. What kind of a person doesn't reply back within 10 minutes? They start to drop into the other split part of themselves before they split the individual here. They are now identifying with the hurt part, the rejected part of themselves, which is the one that is fearful of disintegrating into nothingness and irrelevance.
So the relationship is a mirror which shines the light on the shadow part of yourself.
The more intimate, the more accurate the reflection, if you're paying attention.
So how do we lean into the fact that relationships are a great example? I feel like it's such a great example.
Because it's intimate, yeah.
So it reflects this shadow part of ourselves that comes to the surface, but our instinct is to point the fingers at them, right? Like,
of course,
obviously.
Yeah, because I can't yet see it in myself. It's too overwhelming. That's why I have to point it at you. I have to project it on you.
So it's just a survival mechanism that we all go through.
Egoically, the ego is doing exactly what it needs to do. It's employed to protect, and it's doing it. Who's it protecting? The hurt part of you before that cannot sit with the overwhelm of responsibility. That it's me, that I'm the one creating this or doing this, and that I might not actually be liked right now, or I might be contributing to this destruction. That means I'm a bad person. So it's too split. If I fail or if I don't do it right, then I'm a bad person. Bad people get left behind. That's what they learned when they were younger. And so it's too catastrophic. That's why we lean out of the grey. That's why we don't integrate the middle ground, and it's why we won't look at ourselves in that moment, and it gets projected, is because of the catastrophizing of what we insert into the unknown. I think I heard Peter Crone. You know Peter Crone? I've only just started listening to a little bit of his stuff now. Someone sent it to me, but someone told me that he speaks in a similar way. But so I looked into some of his stuff. But I think recently he just said, "We're not afraid of our unknown." Everyone says your fear of the unknown. That's why we don't. It's like, yeah, that's true, but there's a more accurate way to think about it. And so it's exactly what he said, which was, it's what you project into the unknown, the catastrophe, right? Which is extracted from your past, and the big demon from your past, which is I'll be left alone, I'll be abandoned, or whatever it is, I'll be abused, and then we insert it into the unknown as the worst possible case scenario, and then that's the thing we're most afraid of. That's why we don't take on our task or take responsibility, whatever it is, because of that projection into it. And so we have to then, in the relationship, we insert the bad guy thing, the thing that we're actually trying to resolve in ourselves, which is I actually need to come closer to this hurt part of me so I can learn about it, the unconscious parts of me. But because I'm not ready, the beauty of this life is that I get a partner. And the more intimate I am connected to them, the more I will see that thing that I'm trying to resolve here in them. But it takes a process. First, I will say it's all you, until I wake up one day realizing that it's not all you, it's me. And I have intelligent people that are also still in that mindset that this person's just shit. It's like, I get it. Some people, they're not compatible. They're not creating the same thing. So I get it why relationships break down, is not working. But a lot of the dysfunction, and never miss the opportunity to ask the question, how am I contributing to this? Because it's always a reflection. I'm only aware of the things that I'm ready to see, and I'm unaware of the things that I'm not ready to see. But if I stay long enough through the discomfort, I will see that part of myself. But that means I am responsible, and that I'm not ready to be responsible because this person's behavior is just shit. They're actually abusive. They're actually this and that. No, they did. Every time I try to meet them in this moral way of communicating, they do this. It's like, cool. Then you're still doing something wrong.
Like, I think people, like, there's always another side to it, like where if someone gets mistreated, like, you can't point like, there's a thing where no one wants to point a finger at a victim to their reality, whether such as being mistreated, but there's also a part of themselves that doesn't have a voice, can't assert boundaries, doesn't know who they are. And it's like this feedback mechanism to alert them to the fact that, they have no, they don't have any of their own internal structures. But the feedback mechanism is, it creates these like opportunities to help us become aware of these patterns that we're in. But we find it very difficult to realize that we are in the pattern.
You're creating the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's happening. And so this is a transcendental belief that I am creating this world as I will it into existence. No, Boris, this dude's just shit. This person's just bad. The world is just happening the way it is. I get it. But watch what happens when you have that level of accountability. Like, that's why it's worthy of a spiritual ethic to believe that this world is created from within. It's like we can argue that and philosophize around that forever. But I'm saying, if you believe it to be true, watch what happens with the dominion. It's uncomfortable because it means a lot of the things that you would prefer to project out there and say it's happening from out there, the interpersonal mishaps, it's too overwhelming. That means you would have to be able to sit with that long enough to find out what it's trying to tell me about myself, which it's an extreme level of accountability. But if you're not too sure the value of that, go and meet two people at two different ends of the spectrum of accountability, and you'll see which one you would rather hang out with for longer. Someone that has extreme accountability is always the way.
To end the episode, I want to ask you a question about this self-improvement notion. I think a lot of people, when they go down this avenue of self-improvement, they want to improve their life and they want to delve into spirituality. What I did was I started to shame parts of myself that didn't adhere to this high standard that I've created for myself. And I think integrating more spirituality was like, nothing is good or bad, thinking makes it so. And it's this belief about what I do has a meaning about who I am. So I started to create this, it was like a positive redirection of the same issue, if you know what I mean. So like, this is bad. It was still very black and white thinking. This is bad. This is good. All I did was I just started behaving better, but avoiding the deeper seated issues. So I had like a lot of fear around control. Like I needed to have control, predictability of what's going to happen. Like it's an innate drive, but I have this like compulsion to want to know how things are going to play out. But all I did was transition this same fear from a negative direction, negative coping strategies, into a positive coping strategies. It was just ventured into podcasting or relationships instead of like numbing strategies. But still the underlying current was fear. But I think when people go down self-improvement, they're still missing parts that are still driving this thing. And part of self-improvement is inherently flawed because the paradox is that you're foregoing half of yourself. You know, if you're improving, then what are you leaving behind? And part of spirituality to me is letting go of this belief system. Like there's a really good quote that I like. Did I say it before, from Alan Watts? Spirituality is not about adopting more beliefs. It's about letting go of beliefs. Yeah. So I went down self-improvement and it was like, okay, this is how to unlock high performance, to become a better human. But I was just attaching more beliefs. It was just angled in a more positive direction. So I shamed a lot of myself rather than, not holding that judgment onto myself, which I feel like has taken all of this like pressure off myself. But now I have the strategy and the awareness to choose love rather than like, it's like still fear-based. It's like, I'll do these positive things. If I don't, I'm not worthy. So it's like you feel positive things, you experience positive things, you're training, you're eating well, you're growing businesses. But the underlying current is still, if I don't do this, I'm not worthy. So it's still a lot of fear operating, and that's what I had to become aware of too.
Oh, okay, yeah. This links to what you sort of mentioned before we sat down here, which was the annoyance with discipline, the idea of discipline being self-love.
Yeah, give me a banging quote about that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, okay. Well, it ties into this because one can whip themselves into positive outcomes. Let's say a positive behavioral outcome is eating right, because the outcomes on your physiology is great. Exercise is great, right? This is why I say consciousness is more fundamental than physicality. Because if you're stressed while doing all these tasks, the chemistry associated with stress compared to the good food that you're eating or the amount of exercise you're doing, if you've got this fuel of a whip behind you constantly, we're saying, and it's not a healthy whip. It's a punishment, meaning if you fail or you skip or while you're doing it, I'm a good boy, and if I don't, I'm a bad boy. You're still splitting the world, right, into black and white, and it's a stressful environment for your body because of a belief. The belief is I'm a good boy this and bad boy if I do that, right? It's still black and white, which is a story, right? So the spiritual is to transcend that thing again, so to move closer to love, which is, okay, because it's like, well, does that mean I just do nothing then, Boris? I mean, I can do anything, no discipline, no routines, just fluff around. It's like, you can trial both, but get clear on what it is that you want to create in this world. What is it, firstly, when you slow down, that your heart really wants to experience in this world? You have to start there. That's why I said that before. You start there, and then what does it take to go forthrightly into that? You don't know how it's going to look in the outcome. You don't get that. But you get to go one foot in front of the other into that pursuit religiously, which is why in this text it was the Emerald Tablets, that ancient text there. But it's like, do this religiously, not create religion and force dogma. Do this religiously, which means do a lot of this and you will reap the rewards of that behavior, and you will reach that experience that you would like to have more accurately and faster. And so there is something about not being naive to the timeline of this world. I'm in a physical body, and it requires something to take action, which is karma, is action. So to take action, be willing to fumble through it. I don't have all the answers, but my heart compels me into this thing. Do that forthrightly with no criticisms or judgments of it while you're doing it. Unapologetically go forthright into what you most think is meaningful in towards your creative capacity. If you fail at it, it doesn't go the way you wanted to, or you didn't stick to the exact routine that you thought, you don't then forego your chemical state by going into punishment. Okay, what you do is you just like, well, why? Cool. There's a reason why I didn't feel like doing it today. Didn't go to the gym or didn't do a thing, or okay, as long as I'm not naive to that part of me, cool. All right, so it doesn't mean I needed to punish myself in that moment. If you're trying to live in an optimal state of chemistry, like you're just trying to have flow with this universe. So it's like, I have the freedom to fumble through this world and not get it accurate. How something comes about, you don't get to know. That's the faith component to this world. It's like, just act forthrightly what you believe to most be true in this moment, and be willing to fumble, which in the text is be willing to die for the greater good. Do that fully, but it's like no one else higher than you is judging your successes or failures. So you don't need to do that. That's where those ideas of the Bible said, well, God is a all-forgiving entity. So who are you to hold judgment to yourself? It's like, okay, well, it's telling you to return to love. Get back on your task with love. And so some people say, well, Boris, no, I'm better fueled by anger. I'm better fueled by that drill sergeant in the background and saying, it's like, cool. That's your choice in that experience. It has its own benefits and it has its consequences. As long as you're not naive, if you seek self-awareness and you don't want to be surprised by this world and its outcomes, then you should probably understand its positives and negatives. If you over-appraise the successes, meaning I ate the thing, I did the exercise, I've got this amount of muscle now, you've excessively prioritized the physical realm. Okay, so good. What works in the physical? Dark energy. Physical world is force. You know, it's ego intelligence, the understanding of the mechanisms and laws of the physical world. And so an angry person is more effective in terms of physical dominance than someone that's a pushover, right? So someone can be very aggressive and have a lot of fuel, and they can be effective in terms of domination of the physical, which is why people can go down all kinds of dark, psychopathic type tendencies and be very effective in the physical world. But being effective is not meaning, hey, you're living a meaningful life. It's effective in terms of gaining physical resources, laws and value of the physical world, which are all finite. It all goes away. So it's like, play the game if you want. You're allowed to do that as a sovereign being. But don't be naive that it's finite and you're playing a game against a world that you cannot ultimately control. And you will die one day. And you'll be plagued by meaninglessness. Maybe. But it's like, be aware. So awareness will get you to understanding that line of thinking, of that fuel. I went on that extension because people need to know where that line of thinking goes, or that they justify the fuel of anger and the drill sergeant. Nah, that's what motivates. Like, yeah, cool, man. But that anger is high energy as well. And high energy, go, 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 is the opposite of what? Calm, slow, poise. Where do you find your greatest wisdom? Clarity, heart. Truth is in that poise, in the calm. So don't expect yourself to have clarity in this world while you're go, go, go. Being effective in this world, $1 million, man. Hit the next target. Go on and eat that veggie you want to eat. Going to the gym here, doing that thing. It's like, good on you, man. But look at you, you're very effective in this world. But there's something that you don't have that you can't buy with physical means. You know, with all that effort is poise, peace of mind, stability, truth, intimacy, connection, flow with harmony and love. It's like, so it's good, but know where it's good and know where it's bad. So don't whip yourself.
Something I've, on that same tangent, have been able to help me has been accepting, quote unquote, failure, being okay with whatever happens. I feel like, especially in a sporting context, this has helped a lot. Where like there's a tendency, like fear of failure, right? It's projecting the past stories into the future. What if this happens? What does that mean about me? And whatever. What I've been able to do is surrender to that, accept whatever happens. And then it sort of puts you into more of a flow state. But also, I feel like if you integrate that consciousness into it now, like I feel like a lot of consciousness, awareness, whatever we want to term it, for me is like getting to the energy source of your intentions. Like what is what is driving the thing?
Absolutely.
And at times there is pros and cons. Like that drill sergeant can, in a hyper sporting context, can be very, very effective. However, don't become directed by it without unconsciously. So if you're consciously choosing it for a situation, like if I go out in a footy field and I inject myself with more of a different energy source, that is okay as long as I'm consciously doing it and not being directed by this subconscious belief system that I've almost fallen into. But so I think consciousness,
which is impulsive.
Yeah. So consciousness is like this almost safeguard to falling into these patterns.
Oh, and yeah, great line of thinking and questioning, because you've got, remember the subconscious is the thing that is determining a lot of the outcomes, right? And it's the past. It doesn't exist. If you are unconscious and you have a fuel source from the subconscious realm, which is from a time and a place that is no longer here, it doesn't exist anymore. It's the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old or the teenager, right? Who's not happy with mum or dad. And that's the fuel source. What you're doing in your compulsive behavior is trying to satiate and fulfill a timeline that doesn't exist anymore, which means you're not here, meaning you're not available to what's here and now. You are robotic. It means it's the opposite of freedom. So I'm keeping in the back of my mind, in your mind, what you're saying now is that we seek freedom. Ultimately, is a freedom to be in whatever environment and experience that I want to experience. That freedom only comes from the recognition that the fuel source or my motivations are coming from a time and a place that doesn't exist. Awareness of that then gives me the option to either choose to keep engaging or not engaging, which is the divinity.
Yeah.
I can choose. That's consciousness. I know many people, I'm independent. I don't ask for no one's help, and they grow, they climb the ranks of the corporate ladder. I'm using stereotypes. I don't ask for no money, whatever it is. And it's like, okay, cool, man. And it's very effective. And so there still is no judgment on my behalf, even as I say this. It's the journey that they want to experience. But they've placed value on the monetary world and the status world and the independent world. The statement is, I did this on my own. Okay, so you now stand on your mountaintop with your trophy of your status symbols and your money, whatever it is, right? Then what? What was the assumed outcome? Well, then I would be loved. Then I would be admired. Then I would be recognized. But then it doesn't come. It's unfulfilled. It's forever needing to be satiated. It's like a beast, a little gremlin or something, like trying to always be fed. It's never satiated. It's never fulfilled.
People say that hate is a very finite fuel source in comparison to love.
Of course it is. Yeah, of course it is. We can get into that in a moment. So that person, you have to ask him, okay, then who was it really that you were waiting for at the end of that run where I did it by myself? Well, it was Dad. I just wanted Dad to really just say, I see you, and you're doing a good job. But they went their whole lives unconsciously trying to prove to Dad or Mum that I can do it on my own. Well done. The problem is Dad's not here. And so therefore you didn't realize you were trying to fulfill an old timeline that doesn't exist anymore. And it compelled you. It dominated you. It was your motivation to fulfill something that's no longer here just because you were missing it from the past. The simple forgiveness of that and the closure of that chapter would be the freedom now to choose. Do I really want this or not?
Do you want to delve into the love or hate, or?
Yeah. What's the time? There we go.
It's 12:10.
Okay, yeah. Maybe we can close on the love and hate then.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So something I see a lot of is we see, like, I see hate, like you see this negativity in the world, right? How do we not come to understand that there is this hate and negativity projected into the world? How do we not fall victim to it and focus on creating love and abundance? Because I feel like there's this real tension, right, between love and hate, and it's so easy for the brain to fall into and fixate on hate. And a lot of people's lives change through the mechanism of hate, and they go through an experience, a painful experience. It creates this fear or this lack within, and now their whole life becomes a story of healing this part of themselves or accumulating wealth and tangible physical things, as we talked about. But I feel like love is a really different energy source, and I think a lot of people who have been driven by fear can't comprehend even the effectiveness, but also the fulfillment aspect of love. It's a very foreign concept. So how do we navigate this love and hate in this world that's so the felt experience is incredibly different. As we talked about, one's more effective at times than the other, but love is the one that creates the fulfillment, and it's lasting and it's infinite.
Yep. Fear is a distortion of light. It's the absence of light. That's the overarching philosophy to hold in your mind. It's a fractal of the light. So it's like we've gone into the physical realm. We are in this physicality, and we are away from home. Say the one thing, the light, the whatever this creative singularity thing is, it's your home, right? And so as a baby is separated for the first time from mother, they are far from home, and it's tremendously anxiety-provoking, fear. So being far from home, being in a third dimensional realm, being naive to the true essence of this cosmos, we are in fear. We have fear of this realm. Okay, maybe there's no accidents. Your fear gives you a certain level of acuity and appreciation for what can kill you in this world and end the game. It's pretty handy to be afraid of a tiger if you're out in the jungle, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, fear has its place in the physical domain for survival, meaning the primality, the physical, all aspects of physicality to my existence has density. And that it is there to be aware of and to have a relationship with the ego, social intelligence. It's handy to have all these appreciations, understanding, and respect for the fear and all these things. So we're not naive and the game ends early, right? But if you are seeking, we are all moving in the self-awareness process, the convergence of everything coming back together again as the universe expands, it all comes back together. So we're walking each other home, as we've heard before. And so in that self-awareness, we are going closer to home, which is love, the opposite of fear. In that love pursuit, it is a relinquishing of unnecessary fears because of our primality and the landing into this physical dense world and how fearful everything was. We're screaming, oh my God, noises, sounds, touch. It's overwhelming, and we get love. We don't get love. It gets taken away from us, and we get bullied and fear. But it's humbling you to the third dimension to be aware of its laws so you can be effective in this world, in your creation. All right, so when you understand it, you let it, then it's a slow letting go process, unlearning, where I've unnecessarily placed my fears. So because of my memory, I suffer today as if it was 20 years ago. So that's an unnecessary fear because of the story I created about that. Now let's put that into the relationship context again because it's rich. So I love my partner. I love them so much that I'm going to make sure we do everything together. And if we don't, it probably means it's a sign that we don't love each other anymore. If we start doing individual things, okay, you run that experiment out, right? And I think it's already leading to the intelligent person that that's not love. To then restrict movement of another sovereign individual, out of fear that it might disappear, it's probably not the best way to go. Now, if you were honest, your relationship and its dynamic is characterized by fear, but you've called it love. It's naive. True love, if we might say that, if we're allowed to say true love is respecting spiritual sovereignty. I am willing to experience this fully here, while it's here, and I'll give all of myself so I can see myself. But if for some reason there is misalignment or it disappears, they die, I die, or they want to move on somewhere else, they want to go hang out with their mates, they want to seek that work pursuit, the dynamics change, to not take it personally. The ego is personal. The spirit is impersonal. The spirit is everything all at once. The spirit is I'm you, you are me, and you have the freedom of this world to do as you please. I will have to respect that. And it's not a reflection of that you hate me or, that you want to be away from me. It's like just the non-attachment is love. True love is letting the world outside this vessel. This is my responsibility, but outside of this vessel, you being that person, I don't get to control you. And if I try, and then I justify through some words and language and vocal gymnastics, I can convince you that it's love. If I'm psychopathic, I'll do a fantastic job of it too. Narcissism, and I can convince you this is love, control, but it's fear. It's fear. So it's handy to know that the separation of love and fear, we are quite confused about what we think love is versus what fear is. Fear is finite because it's of this world, and it's a way to have respect for the finite components of this world, to be afraid of things that warrant fear, so I don't get hurt in the wrong places. Love is to allow all the stories of my mind, the assumed fear, the existential fears of being abandoned, all these things of the egoic mind, I'm to relinquish all those, to give freedom to everyone around me, to act virtuously and fully. This is love. And it's more, and it's infinite because I can apply that to everyone around me, to myself even as well. But if I go on the pathway of fearing everything and everyone around me, to just extremify them for a moment, love and fear, that fear will consume you and kill you, because what chemistry comes out of fear. So you extremify both. Love is optimizing. it's collaborative, it's coherent, it's in flow, it's harmonizing. And so that seems to be a better fuel source. Fear, to just run it out to its extremity, leads to the destruction of the self. So there's the grey. Look for the greys. Where am I applying a justification of love where it's actually fear? And then check in. Be honest with yourself. And am I aligned with spiritual sovereignty? Am I really in love? Because if I was, I'm listening to the needs and wants of this person. And I'm allowing it to be, while also honoring what I want to experience in this world. I don't get to control what's outside this body. I can only pitch my view and vision and creative thing. And if they want to play, they play. If they don't want to play, they don't want to play. That's freedom, but comes the tremendous egoic fear.
I love that.
Then you choose.
Well said. Where do we go to find your stuff, Boris? What's happening with you as well?
I always forget this is a question at the end. And okay, well, what's going on? Okay, for me, I think for someone that wants a one-on-one session, which might be closing off pretty soon with the general public, I think in a few months, it's still my website, www.boriswalter.com. You can book in a session there. You can request a booking and I'll see names and I'll choose who I work with. So you can always do that through the booking system there. I offer 1 hour, 3 hour, 5 hour sessions at the moment. Depending on how deep someone wants to go, a bit of hypnosis, perspective, chats like this as well. I don't do clinical anymore, so it's more like powerful sessions. They're short-term, solution-focused.
How would that contrast to clinical?
Clinical, it's like it's like an ongoing relationship based on diagnostics, and you're treating it accordingly to those diagnostics. And so if psychotherapy would be an ongoing relationship treating in that way. So as long as people don't expect what they get from the average psychologist or psychotherapist anymore. Like I'm here to get in deep and it demands courage.
Quickly, effectively.
Yeah,
with the right amount of courage.
Let's stop lying to ourselves, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there's that, but that's eventually going to evolve. So soon I'm going to have recordings on there. I'm going to stop seeing one-on-ones, and then it'll be just a bunch of my guided meditations that people keep asking for. So I'm going to have all these different kinds of things on there, like your meditations that will be prescriptive. So I'm going to have them prescriptive type meditations for different ailments. Then I'm like hypnotic meditation. Then I'm going to have sacred text components. So reading particular parts of sacred text with a hypnosis induction followed by the reading of it with a bit of an interpretation, then a fade out of music where one can just meditate for 7 minutes or so. And that's your daily 15-minute meditation on that particular stanza of that sacred text or something like that. And I'm choosing different ones. Bhagavad Gita, Marcus Aurelius's meditations. I'm doing the Bible soon next week. And I'm just picking at the moment 10 from each of those texts. And I'll do more later. So then I'm going to have story time. So bedtime stories for adults as well. I'm going to do that.
That's so cool.
That'll be like meaningful, powerful, but also about, letting go.
Oh, I love that.
And helping people sleep essentially as well.
Awesome.
So it'll be designed to fade out into sleep.
Yeah.
To help people sleep. Because it's really bad. People suck at sleeping.
That's true.
So I'm going to help with that. Okay, that's that's coming soon, maybe in a couple of months. Mentorship, same thing. Get in contact with me there. That's where it's going to evolve in the one-on-one. I'll only be working soon in a couple of months with mentorship. And that's like an individual coming and I'll work with them on a monthly basis, usually for a commitment of 6 months to a year, somewhere in that gap, where someone's wanting to go through a transitional period of their life, upgrading philosophies, beliefs, their conversational capacity, but also difficulty. So creating another identity in this world as they let another one go. And it's involving with hypnosis, experiential things as well, meditative practices. And that's priced accordingly to have my exclusive time. And I'll only work with about 4 people at once during that period. So that's what I'm doing now, but that's where it's only going to be that exclusive. And then the corporate world is the last one. There's a lot happening at the moment.
That's awesome.
The corporate world is, again, you can see the website, www.boriswaltercic.com. And that will be an alternative EAP, so counseling service for companies. Also with a leadership program, a 10-stage leadership program, which will evolve leaders beyond a behavioral philosophy into a spiritual philosophy that governs the workplace dynamics.
Good luck.
Yeah, man. I've got a good team with me as well
Okay, cool.
of 5 guys that all see the same thing that I do. And yeah, that's all happening at the same time. I've got 2 corporates with me already, and that's
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and Instagram at Boris Walter official.
Yeah.
Thanks
Awesome.
for asking,
Boris,
man. Appreciate
yeah,
that.
Boris, I appreciate you coming on. It was an
Yeah.
epic chat.
No, thanks. Good questions, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.